Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everybody. I'm back. Trailer Park Prophet coming at you live from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado. Yippee dippy skippy. The Prophet is back. Loco Friday. Got a really good show for you today. We're going to talk about Chicago. We're going to talk a little bit about ObamaCare. We're going to talk about what's happening in Gunnison, Colorado. We're going to talk about the Prophet's experience in local government. I promised you that I was going to spend some time doing that. I want to give you a little insight into my background with local government, and I think that kind of gives you some insight into my viewpoints on local government, why I think all politics is local, etc., etc. But again, welcome back. This is Blog Talk Radio. I'm the Trailer Park Prophet, Daniel Gray. And this is the show on Friday we do. It's called Loco Friday. And remember, all politics is loco. Or, yeah, all politics is crazy and local, for sure. All right, let's see here. Where do I want to start off? I want to talk about what's going on in Chicago. The mayor of Chicago is in Washington, D.C., has been in Washington, D.C. this week, and he is representing a pending disaster that's about ready to take place in Chicago over their employee retirement plan. If you want to look at the public retirement plan for Chicago retirees, not including teachers, you got to look at the total unfunded liability for Chicago's Retired Employees Fund is $19.4 billion in debt, unfunded liability. And right now, they've borrowed so much money, Chicago has, to pay for their funding of their retirement plan for their public employees, that the city of Chicago is looking at a huge $1 billion balloon payment from their creditors. And $1 billion is a lot of money for any municipality to come up with, even for a state. You think about Colorado as an example, our state budget is around $8 billion a year. So this is a lot of money to come up with. And in terms of the amount of money $1 billion equals, if you were to divide in the amount of citizens that are in Chicago, that number would be $7,000 per resident in the city of Chicago. $7,000 that each and every one of them are on the hook, essentially, for this $1 billion balloon payment for Chicago's creditors who, probably gave Chicago some leniency and a sweetheart deal and said, look, okay, we'll let you, we'll give you some time, but you're going to have to come up with a balloon. You need to get out there and figure out how to pay this money, and we'll give you time, but there's a balloon payment at a date certain. And I imagine that's what Chicago's looking at. But back to Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, he was in Washington, D.C. trying to borrow money from the federal government. Now, I would bet you that somehow President Obama is going to find a way to help out his good buddy and and Obama's first chief of staff in the White House, Rahm Emanuel. So Rahm Emanuel is saying that if he doesn't get some kind of a bailout from the federal government or the state, that the city of Chicago is going to have to double everybody's property tax to pay this one-time $1 billion balloon payment. Double the property taxes. And what progressive socialist statists don't understand, or maybe they actually do understand, if you raise property tax beyond the tipping point, what happens is people start leaving town, abandoning their properties. And I was listening to Roush today, and he brought up a good point. What happens then, Chicago winds up with these people's houses if they don't pay their property tax. But I imagine most people are going to try to sell their houses, which means the value of the houses in Chicago are going to go down. They're pricing people out of the Chicago market. I mean, there's a point at which increasing taxes has a regressive effect. It's basic economics 100. And you reach that point, whether it's sales tax or it's property tax, whatever tax you can imagine. ObamaCare tax, good example, except that there's ObamaCare taxes all over the place. Let's see what else. Oh, in Chicago too, it says that the Teachers Association in Chicago, their publicly funded retirement plan is so deeply in debt that the leadership for the Chicago Teachers Association is saying that they're going to have to triple the income to the teachers' pension plan. Triple it. And we didn't even have a number on that. I could look into that more. I know we've reported on Chicago and their various public employee unions, but the teachers' union's even in worse shape than the city of Chicago, which I have to remind you, I was thinking about this today on our walk, me and Bailey Barker. You know, you got to remember that the stimulus bill that passed in 2008, 2009, the stimulus bill, which was just roughly under $1 trillion. In fact, it ended up being $1 trillion. Most of that money, a lot of that money, that stimulus money, went to bail out all of these various retirement plans, public employee retirement plans, and bail out cities, counties, school districts, states. Probably a third of the stimulus money went to bail out all of these entities. And as a side note, remember too that it was that $1 trillion for the stimulus that carried over in outer years. And that's how, remember, we reported here that Congress hasn't passed a legal budget in over 5 years. Well, what they did when Obama got into office, they added the $1 trillion roughly for the stimulus. And what else? They added, right off the bat, $55 billion or $555 billion they added to the Bush budget. But what they did is they heaped on the stimulus, the TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program. That was another $1 trillion, so that's $2 trillion right there. They added that to the continuing budget that we've been living under for the last 5 years and really never got approved by Congress. We haven't had an official budget, like I said, for 5 years. But immediately, Obama, by extending that additional $2 trillion that was added in 2009 and 2010 of the TARP, the bank bailout, and of the stimulus, they just carried those numbers forward. So that's how we say, or I've said in the past, that Obama increased the size of the federal government by 24%. That's what I'm talking about. The continuation of the spending of that additional $2 trillion. I know I'm trying to be kind of wonkish here, but it's important that you understand why we're at where we are. And our total, I'm trying to think now, what is our total budget? Oh yeah, okay, our total budget is around $4 trillion. All right, now, I know I just said that we increased it by $2 trillion, and we did in budget year 2009, 2010, 2011. And since that time, remember when they had the big negotiation with the sequester and all that? That started the trend for the increase to go down. It didn't decrease any budget. It just decreased the amount of the increase, which is important to understand. So that's where we are now. And it's really hard to know where all that money went. I mean, the first year, yeah, okay, that money went to the bankers. The other money went to bail out all the governments and went to buy help all of Obama's green energy buddies. And I'm trying to think where some of that other money spent. Just something like 8% went to infrastructure like Obama promised. But it's just important stuff to know. Also, in my mind, again, we nailed this story here at the Trailer Park Prophet. The ObamaCare mandate, we talked about that. The individual mandate was actually tucked in a memo that was done, released on Friday, what they call the Friday afternoon information dump. Well, we reported on it, and what it did is it extends the individual mandate in ObamaCare, the individual mandate to have health insurance, extends the mandate into 2016. And that's because they don't want people having to realize what Obamacare is all about and wind up voting for the Republicans. I think the Democrats right now are pretty scared. And I know we reported on this already, but I wanted to restate to you some of the verbiage that was actually in this regulation. And it was a regulation reportedly that was stuck in another memo from another department, another subject, which is totally kind of shows their hand, the Obama administration's hand, that they don't know what's going on, that they're trying to hide these changes and stuff like that. I mean, it should have been on its own, standalone, what they call white paper, that would have said Health and Human Services, Kathy Sebelius announces the regulation, blah, 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 allowing for the extension of the individual mandate to after 2016. That's how it should have been presented to the public. But instead, it was put in a, I don't know, something like Department of Transportation memo that this was going to be another extension of the individual mandate. And like I said on Wednesday, this is the second extension of the individual mandate, which is the backbone of Obamacare, where the majority of all the money is going to come from. That's the other thing you need to realize too. Again, the middle class, they pay the way in our economy, no matter if it's in my community, your community, or in Congress. And here's what I thought was really interesting. They're saying that the reason they're extending the mandatory individual mandate is because it'll be creating a hardship on people. It's called a hardship waiver. So people that have been canceled from their private insurance plan or are scheduled to be canceled, they now can have the claim, and none of this has to be verified. All they have to do is say that they're a hardship or paying Obamacare coverage, or even the penalty. I think it waives the penalty too, is a hardship, and you don't have to abide by Obamacare, and you can deem yourself a hardship. Now, who in the right mind is going to say, well, I'm doing pretty good. I don't mind paying my fair share. I don't want to have to cancel my cell phone or my cable to pay for Obamacare, and I don't have to, so it's not really a hardship, but why not be a hardship? That money I'm going to be paying to Obamacare could go for payment for a new BMW, or I could go down on a sex vacation to Costa Rica. I mean, that's a hardship if I can't go see the sexual therapist down in San Jose, Costa Rica. So in essence, the guts of Obamacare is dead without the individual mandate, and yet they continue to extend all these deadlines. And we reported there's like 30 Obamacare deadlines that have been extended. I actually have 12 for sure that we might go into if I think we have enough time. But at any rate, Obamacare is an abomination. And by every report, Democrats are running away from the bill. And just like I said, they're saying, well, you know, Obamacare is not what we expected. It's going to need to be fixed. They've already got their narrative down. I mean, they're so fast in the Democratic Party getting their message out. So the message is, yeah, sure, Obamacare has had some trouble, but any program like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid had problems during the rollout, which isn't necessarily true. But that's going to be their position. And they're going to say, well, we can fix it if the Republicans wouldn't fight us tooth and nail all along the way. You know, that's going to be their narrative. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to buy it. They really are. They're going to buy it. They're going to say, why not? But I'm looking here in my plastic crystal ball, and it just looks like to me that this Obamacare has affected so many people, so many families, so many communities, that people are talking amongst themselves at the grocery store, on the street corner, at Walmart, at the library, at the Starbucks, and they're sharing stories. And there's not a lot of good stories out there about Obamacare. People come in contact with Obamacare, I think in most instances they're disappointed. And that's what people are talking about. And that's why I think the poll numbers are so bad for the Democrats and Obama. What we reported, President Obama's approval rating is 38%, and something like 40%, no, 46% think that the president's doing a bad job. Those are horrible, horrible numbers. But I'm not sure President Obama really cares. I think he is running for the finish line, and he's going to try to do as much as he can through administrative decree, and damn the Congress, damn the people. He is going to get his agenda pushed as far as he can, and that's his goal. All right, let's see here. No more notes. Where do I want to go? Maybe I should get this out of the way. I do have the Gunnison Country Dead Tree News right here in front of me, and I thought we would run through this pretty quick. Kind of just check in to see what's going on in the Gunnison area. And I have the very, very hokey Gunnison Country Dead Tree News in front of me. This is a Thursday, March 13th edition. And this is their headline. Pothole Predicament. Chris Rourke, Times writer. Conditions of roadways perturb motorists and business owners. That's their lead story. I don't know, dimwits. Let's see. The other story above the fold is grazing practices under scope. BLM divides into drought response planning. Article written by Alan Waters. And the reason I bring this up is all of these articles are about government. I mean, that's all the Gunnison Country Times does, is report on government. The story below the fold, USF, United States Forest Service, to issue more fishing permits. Local outfitters less than thrilled about plan to allow more guides. And these licenses to be guides or provide a service in the forest, these are worth a lot of money. A lot of money. And a lot of times, like these guys from Crested Butte, I'm trying to think of their name, you know, they're involved in all the politics, and man, they make bank off these permits. But I think that's good. They're going to issue some more, have a little competition. But then on the other hand, I don't like the idea there's going to be more people in the forest. The real purist out there, people like myself who, I don't mean to brag, I've walked 2,000 miles in the wilderness of Colorado with my dog Bailey Barker and my 4 pack goats. And if you can't drag your dumb ass out there by yourself, you maybe shouldn't be out there. And if you need a guide, maybe you shouldn't be out there. But some people, purists, and I'm not saying I'm necessarily in this camp, but I mean, I do have some emotions. I do have some feelings of support about this, that if you're not capable of being out there safe, you shouldn't be out there. You know, you should learn how to be a mountain person incrementally. But then on the other hand, it's good to have a guide with you, because some of these places are so remote that a lot of these greenhorns get up there and into the mountains, and they get lost and hurt, and then you have to send in a rescue team, and it costs people a lot of time, and they tear up their gear, and they might get hurt too, and they're away from their jobs and their families. But I don't know, I just have mixed opinions. Let's see, the Bureau of Reclamation, March 1, runoff forecast for the Blue Mesa River projects 850,000 acre-feet of inflow between April and July. That's 126% of average. So in Colorado, we have been in a drought cycle, and every report I've heard has been that the snowpack for this year is over 100%. And here in this drainage, it's over 126%. And I believe I heard up in Vail, it's something like 420% in one drainage. I don't want to say actual which one because I don't remember. This year's Gunnison Valley Journal to focus on water. Now you're going to see a lot of people out there, and there is a lot of attention on water. And like I've said before, in the West, water isn't the most important issue. It's the only issue. And so it says here, in 1996, local writer and Headwaters philosopher George Sibley was on a mission to create new ways for the inhabitants of the Gunnison Valley to develop a sense of place, to experience and express what it means to live here. All right, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. Police seek identity of alleged theft. You'd be surprised in these small towns. There's a lot of theft. Somebody walked off with one of my propane tanks. Oh, here, mine talks back on track. Thursday, officials from the town of Crested Butte, High Country Citizens Alliance, and again, this pisses me off because Colorado is a mining state, and around Crested Butte it was a mining town, and it's this country, or this High Country Citizens Alliance, which is funded by out-of-state sources, probably some from George Soros, and they're not from Colorado. They don't represent the citizens, but yet they have legal standing to fight against a mine that has already historically been there on the Red Lady Mountain, or Mount Evans, as some people call it. And it says here, this is from the town manager, it says, we talked about the potential to collaborate, said town manager Todd Crissett. I think we've reopened lines of communication. And it says the stakeholders announced in early 2012 that talks had been initiated that could result in a land exchange that would end the prospect of a mine on the mountain once and for all, while washing U.S. Energy's hands of costly wastewater treatment plants. So, it sounds like basically this group of people that we don't know where they get their money, High Country Citizens Alliance and the Red Lady Coalition, both of which I bet have out-of-state money. But they should have to display who they get their money from. Every time they buy an advertisement, they should have to list their top 100 contributors, so we have an idea who in the hell's paying their way. It just pisses me off. But see, this is why you got to get involved. You got to go to these meetings, especially if they're developing minerals. You have to get involved. Freedom is not free of responsibility. You have to be involved. You have to know the players. You have to know the issues, and you have to make your opinion known. That's part of being free. Next article. Master program surpasses enrollment expectations. We're talking about Western State University of Colorado. The new master's program is Environmental Management Program at Western State Colorado University is posed to launch this coming summer, doubling expectations for enrollment and energizing campus. The program has admitted 35 new students, and Western is adding 6 new instructors to its faculty. 6 new instructors. Imagine what that's going to cost. John Hausendorfer, who is a really good guy, I've taken his class, the director of the new program, says the MEM is effectively a MBA in environmental issues on steroids. Boy, that's really good, Professor. He says the program is so popular that there is now a waiting list for admissions, and there's no jobs for these people. You know, that's the sad thing. Says here that the university has hired 5 to 6. Oh, with these. Okay, here's Dr. Hausendorfer again. He says, with these new hires, we are tripling the faculty in Western's environment and sustainability department. I mean, what a wishy-washy name. The 35 admitted students, they should be admitted to insane asylum, hail from 25 different universities representing 15 different major areas of study. After attending the introductory sessions in early August 27, all of them will remain in Gunnison to continue their studies. The other 8 will study remotely while continuing their professional work. We are very excited, said Hausendorfer said. The quality and diversity of the students coming to the program is very impressive. It's quite a community we're building. You know, every liberal has to throw in community. I'm excited, you already said that, Doctor, to see all this talent coming to the Gunnison Valley. You know, he's doing his rah-rah for the Chamber of Commerce. And then, of course, new faculty, Abigail Chavez. And let's see who else. Environmentalists, you know, all of these people, some of them are, one of them is from Germany or studied in Germany. Another one is from New Delhi. Corey Knapp. But at any rate, I mean, where are they going to go with this? Where are you going to get a job? I mean, all of these people, these new professors, I mean, they all have PhDs, and they've been going to ecological colleges all over the world, Alaska, Denver. And where are the jobs? Who are they going to work for? I mean, that's what we've been talking about all along, and I don't know. Environmental studies. Let's see. The school district pushes to roll back the negative factor. Again, you know, here's the school district, like your school district. They're always in the newspaper, and they're always building a case for more money. They never have enough more money. Here's a notice of Gunnison County BLM and U.S. Forest Service road closures. We've talked about this a lot. The government is coming in and closing down roads all over the mountains. And I mean, there's a long list here, all kinds of county roads. The following roads will be closed from March 15, 2014 through May 15, 2014. I have reservations about this. If you can't pack your ass in there, maybe you shouldn't be in there with your Toyota. But they're closing, looks like maybe 30 roads here. A big city market. Find your weekly advertising inserts. I mention that because these little local newspapers, these Dead Tree News, they run a protection racket. And if you don't want to see your business in the local newspaper, then what you do is you buy advertising, which is a protection against the scrutiny of these carpet-bagging, progressive, socialist, status reporters and publishers and editor. Water woes, next article, water woes spur emergency planning, local leader McClough at forefront. Emergency planning is underway in response to water in 2 major western reservoirs dropping to dangerous levels. That seems like old news, but over the last 5 years, levels have dropped in several of our lakes here, and you may know, like Lake Powell's low here in Gunnison. Let's see, Lake Mead's low, Mesa Reservoir's low. Oh, this is kind of cool. Birthing Center receives award. The Gunnison Valley Hospital Family Birth Center has been recognized for excellence in care for breastfeeding support. I guess some women need their breasts supported. Multicultural Office restores services. $50K Caring for Colorado Foundation grant to support healthcare navigation. Recent grant funding from Caring for Colorado Foundation has restored services of the Gunnison County's Multicultural Resource Center that were eliminated last year. And what this is our tax dollars going to pay for the aid and comfort of illegal aliens so that they can take jobs from our regular citizens that pay the taxes that pay for the Multicultural Center. And looks here, it says a CFO. It looks like their yearly funding. No, that can't be right. I was looking for the yearly funding for the Multicultural Center. Unbelievable. Taxpayers paying money to give aid and comfort to illegal aliens. City supports Chamber's spring greenback promo. You know, and this is kind of interesting too. You know, this is a form of alternative currency. You know, we talked about what's it called, Bitcoin, and how Bitcoin and 200 other companies are alternative currencies. Well, this is a form of local currency, and there is this kind of thing going on all over the United States. And you're able to redeem your dollars for these Gunnison greenbacks, and they're worth a little more than your greenbacks, so there's a lot of incentives. It's basically giving people a discount. But this is creepy because it's run by, well, it's run by the Gunnison City Council, which is creepy. And when the Gunnison City Council's in bed with the Chamber of Commerce, and that always creeps me out. Like I said about the Chamber of Commerce, same thing. They're in bed with the newspapers, and if you go to any Chamber of Commerce, you can find out from one of its members where to buy illegal drugs and where to get illegal alien support or work. Reports and promotions, Black Canyon. What's this Black Canyon? To pump $45 million into local economy. They're probably doing other government jobs. See, here's the government. Where's all the money being spent in Gunnison? It's by governments. And here it's being spent by the National Park Service. Everything is about government in this newspaper. You know, except for the grocery store and the Chamber of Commerce that's in bed with the college and all the other government. Stock growers not pursuing draw-only elk hunting. I have no idea what that is. Stock growers not pursuing draw-only. Oh, they're always trying to figure out a more equitable way to issue these hunting licenses. The proposal for draw-only elk hunting in the Gunnison Basin doesn't appear to be on the table. But here again, more government, more games. Another, let's see. Again, we're reading the Gunnison Country Times, or as I like to lovingly refer to them as the Gunnison Dead Tree News. Their editor is Chris Dickey, and here's his commentary. Oh, no, it's going to be Will Shoemaker. He's the editor, although it doesn't say editor under Will Shoemaker's name anymore. And Will Shoemaker, I'd love to bring this up. He was or is the editor of the Gunnison Dead Tree News, and he recently married a waitress at the local coffee shop. Listen to this, and here let's listen to a little of Will Shoemaker's insight into election season that's coming up. He says, elections are a lot like football games. Spectators choose a side to back, watch the players face off, and then they beat the tar out of one another until the clock runs out in November. With last week's county caucuses initiating a build-up of major party state assemblies consider this time of the year. The preseason fans for the political junkies like me get a glance at players' performance, who's got the stamina for the long shot. What a crock of shit. Will Shoemaker and Chris Dickey are going to back the people they're friends. You know, there's no contest in Will Shoemaker's mind. This is such hogwash. Are you serious, Will? And then he goes on, you know, with his tedious analogy. Who hits hard enough to outlast their opponent? Whose fancy footwork can get them out of even the most condemning scandal? What a crock. He goes on to say, party leaders, much like a general manager, are still working. No. What an idiot. Let's see how he finishes up. For a reporter, this is Will Shoemaker's last paragraph. Elections are the Super Bowl. The difference is that while football is played by players on the field, politics take place via channels of communication between people. That's you and me. What a crock of metabolic waste, Will. God, you are so full of it. He says, we're the players and we can't escape the game no matter how much we'd like to think otherwise. Let's get in the game and play ball. Or more aptly, get ready to rumble. What a skippy. Will Shoemaker, you are such a skippy. Alright, we're leaving the Gunnison Dead Tree News and Skippy Will Shoemaker and head publisher owner super duper Skippy Chris Dickey. Alright, where are we? Okay, you're listening to Daniel Gray on the Trailer Park Prophet on Blog Talk Radio, broadcasting from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado on Blog Talk Radio. This is Loco Friday, coming at you live. Oh, wait, I should check and see if I have any callers. By the way, if you'd like to call in, you can do so. All you've got to do, my fellow lovers of liberty, is dial 646-716-8506. Again, if you haven't gotten that tattooed on your hand or arm or leg yet, that's 646-716-8506. And you too can talk to the Trailer Park Prophet. Alright, let's get to... Oh, I know what I wanted to do. Let's see if there's any breaking news. Okay, this... Oh, my God. Oh, up to speed on the Malaysian jet craft. Varying stories. Hard, really, to figure out what's going on. It does look like, according to Rush Limbaugh, that this airliner changed route and was headed towards the Middle East, which means it was hijacked. Now, there are other versions that the plane turned around and went back, but one thing they could figure out, which I thought was amazing, and that is that somehow the plane was flying for a while with its lights off and its communication off and its identification ping signal. All of that stuff they know was turned off. So the plane was flying dark. And Rush brought up the idea, and I think it's a valid one, or at least one to consider right now, and that is if they were flying dark and were not able to respond to a warning, this plane could have been shot down. right out of the sky. You know, some little country in that area could have been saying, oh my God, here comes a bomber from Russia or China or US, and we better take it out because it could take out one of our cities. So it's, you know, great story. The Malaysian plane that's missing now for what, 4 days. Interesting story. But see, here's what I was thinking about that. Everyone's talking about this jet, this 777, Boeing 777. If it was a terrorist act, if this plane was hijacked, you would think someone on the ground would have known who is responsible, and that they would want the world to know if these hijackers, if it was in fact hijackers that hijacked this Malaysian plane, they would want to say who they were. They'd say, well, we're Al-Qaeda, we're whoever. You know, we're from Greenpeace, for Christ's sakes. We're from the Western Colorado University Environmental Studies Program. All right, this story's kind of stunning. John Kerry, our Secretary of State, warned of serious repercussions for Russia on Monday if last-ditch talks over the weekend to resolve the crisis in Ukraine failed to persuade Moscow to soften its stance. So now we have John Kerry. I married an insanely rich woman who happens to be an heiress to the ketchup fortune of Hunt's, is trying to tell the Russian President Putin, who by all accounts has a pretty stiff backbone, that if he doesn't do something, that the U.S. is gonna have some serious repercussions. So he's drawn a red line. John Kerry's drawn a red line. I mean, he's putting a timeline on Russia and what they're doing in the Ukraine. Kerry will travel to London on Friday, meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov ahead of Sunday's referendum vote in the Crimea region to secede from the Ukraine and join the Russian Federation. See, I didn't even know about that. That's big news in and of itself. The U.S. and European officials argue that Moscow is orchestrating the referendum and waging an intimidation campaign with thousands of Russian troops controlling the region. If Russian-backed lawmakers in Crimea go through with the Sunday referendum, Kerry said that the U.S. and its European allies will not recognize it as legitimate under international law. So this is a this is a recipe for disaster. And any mention of an election in Crimea, the American authorities should be on the ground. And so should the UN to make sure it's a clean election. I mean, this could be the catalyst for the conflict between the U.S. and Russia. Of course, you got to ask yourself, you know, you look at what's going on in the Ukraine. Do you really think that Obama is going to honor its commitment to the Ukraine and send in forces? You really think Obama's got the backbone to do something like that? It says here there will be a response of some kind. This is Kerry talking. Get a load of this. How does this sit with you? Imagine, if you will, you're the president of Russia, President Putin, and you hear this coming from John Kerry, the Secretary of State under the Obama administration. Quote, there will be a response of some kind to the referendum itself, Kerry said. Now, what's that mean? If there is no sign from Russia of any capacity to respond to this issue, there will be a very serious series of steps on Monday. Serious series of steps. It sounds like Kerry's going to be doing tap dancing, because I tell you right now what's going to happen here. I got an eye in my plastic crystal ball. And this has reached a point where Obama is going to have to intercede. And this is what Obama did to Kerry before in regards to our policy dealing with Syria. Kerry on Friday makes a big statement, and then over the weekend, Obama contradicts Kerry. I see this happening. Kerry's going to get thrown under the bus by Obama again. Kerry goes on to say, he says, our hope is to have Russia join in respecting international law. God, that is a hoot. I can promise you President Putin and his advisors had a good laugh over that. I got to read that again. That's so funny from our Secretary of State, John Kerry. Our hope is to have Russia join in respecting international law. I can't believe these people are so stupid. Or maybe they're just going through the motions. And this is just for the consumption of the lapdog media. Okay, Kerry goes on to say, he says, there is no justification, no legality in this referendum that is taking place, he said. The hope is that the reason will prevail, but there is no guarantee of that. Oh my God, Kerry sounds like a Walmart prophet himself. No guarantee of reason will prevail. That kind of means he doesn't have a lot of confidence, which isn't the kind of posture you want to display in public to Putin. Which means that, in my mind, most likely the Obama administration understands that they're just going to eventually have to roll over on the Ukraine. You know? Now, Senator Lindsey Graham, a South Carolina Republican and top critic of President Obama's foreign policy, asked what the administration would do if Russian forces advanced farther into the eastern area, Ukraine, and the new government in Kyiv asked the U.S. for weapons to fight the Russians. Kerry responded carefully, saying, we have contingencies. We are talking through various options that may or may not be available. Our hope is not to create hysteria or excessive concern about that at this point in time, he said. Our hope is to avoid that, but there's no telling that we can. And in case you went to public school, what Kerry's saying is we don't have a clue what's going on. We don't have a clue what we're going to do to a scenario of possibilities that can happen. Our decision-making matrix was thrown out the window months ago. We don't have a plan. We don't have a strategy. What he's saying is that the Obama administration doesn't even know which treaties they're going to honor. I mean, that's the other side of the coin. The U.S. has treaty agreements with the Ukraine in the event this very thing happens, as it has with the Russians invading a portion of the Ukraine, the Crimea. I mean, this right here, all you got to do is read this language and you can see John Kerry he's just treading water. And he goes on to say, oh, this is so typical. This is John Kerry again. He says, I've been impressed on how united our European allies are on this. To a person, to a country, they are very, very, very to the second power, committed to make sure there is accountability, he said. That is such a limp dick response. You know, I bet you John Kerry, he's one of those guys, if you shake his hand, he has that, what I call the cold, dead fish handshake. That's John Kerry. He's a cold, dead fish. I mean, this is preposterous. I've been impressed. Like John Kerry being impressed is a big deal. On how united our European allies are on this. Yeah, they're to a person standing behind the U.S. asking, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And the U.S. is wanting to lead from behind. I mean, if the U.S. doesn't have any resolve against Russia, then the rest of the world's not going to have any resolve. That's what he's saying. The Europeans are standing behind the U.S. wondering, what the hell are we going to do? All right. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, here we are, and we're watching history being made. And here we have John Kerry drawing a red line in the sand, giving the president of Putin an ultimatum. And it's so amateurish. Okay, let's see here. I want to hit over a few headlines here, and then I want to get into the part of the program I promised you on Wednesday, talking about some of my experiences with local government. All right, this headline here comes from whizbangblog.com. Headline: Muslims demanding their own Sharia patrols in Michigan. That's in the United States. During the public comment time at a Dearborn City Council meeting, a Muslim stood to demand that the city institute Sharia patrols to keep young people out of parks and to prevent the sale of drugs. So here we are. We're, and remember in Chicago, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who we spoke of earlier, already enlisted the support or the activity of, I'm trying to think of the Muslim organization in Chicago to go out there and actually patrol the streets of Chicago. Louis Farrakhan, his group. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but you can Google it. So we already have governments recognizing Muslim groups in order to provide law and order in the municipality of Chicago, and now we see Muslims demanding their own Sharia patrols in Michigan, which would also allow for them to implement their dress code on women. So women that aren't dressed Sharia compliant can be harassed, pushed around, fined by these Sharia police. And so here they are. I mean, this is what they want to do. You need to understand that. Oh, here's a good quote from John Adams, one of our founding fathers. I got this from my black conservative friend Kevin McGarry. He writes here, lest we forget, quote, this again is John Adams. Government is instituted for the common good, for the protection, safety, prosperity, and happiness of the people, and not for profit, honor, or private interest of any one man, family, or class of men. Therefore, the people alone have an incontestable, unalienable, and indefensible right to institute government and to form, alter, or totally change the same when their protection, safety, prosperity, and happiness require it. And I propose to you that communities like Detroit, like Chicago, we're talking about them. California comes to mind. Other places where the progressive socialist statists run the government, their economies are caving in because of the over promising to their public employees. And because of that, they're devaluing people's property, which John Adams talks about the protection of their prosperity. Their prosperity in these communities where the taxes are going up because of the legacy cost of the retirement of their public employees is basically rendered their property and their ability to support themselves. It makes it next to impossible because the cost of running the government is so high that the average person can't afford to pay their portion of the bill. Let's see. Another group of Muslims demand that halal food be served in New York public schools. And see, this is why all politics is local. Because if people don't fight what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan. If people don't fight in New York against special accommodations given to Muslim students and parents, then we're going to wind up being under their reign, because their pursuit of their enactment of Sharia law all over the United States is their charge in life. That is their mission. They're on a mission from Allah to impose Sharia law on all of us. And that's a fact. I mean, it's on YouTube, it's everywhere. And this article here, written by Pamela Geller, says a relentless push to Islamicize the public square, and in this case the public school, escalates in New York City. Fresh on the heels of Muslim school holidays comes this demand for halal food in the New York City public schools. According to these well-coached children, the vegetarian option is not sufficient because, quote, we don't get the protein that we need. These kids look hardly undernourished. And frankly, it's protein is your thing, then why not bring hard-boiled eggs to school or a beef jerky? Because it's not about the food, it's about the Islamic super racism. And see, the thing is, I mean, as far as I know, I think halal food's just like kosher food. It was slaughtered and prepared by a person who was somehow ordained by one of the higher-ups in Islam or the higher-ups in Judaism. You know, it's so spiritual and silly. New York high school students suspended for NRA pro-Second Amendment t-shirt. Shane Kinney, who is an avid hunter with a part-time job at the local gun club, says that he believes that he was asked to remove the shirt more for practical beliefs than for inappropriateness. That was tough to say. Oh my God! Alfonso Rachel smacks down liberals who play the race card. Oh, I've heard this tape. Oh damn, we were supposed to do... We should just do one right now. And here's Alfonso Rachel. He's one of my all-time favorite political commentators, and he's a black conservative man. And he says what white liberal Democrats fear the most is black conservative Republicans. That's right. And it could be that our only hope to save our republic is black Republicans, black conservative Republicans, and black conservative Latinos, and also conservative gays. They may be the only thing that's going to save our country. All right, I wanted to do this. 10 words and phrases that too many folks say incorrectly. I'm not going to bore you with that. You can go to my Facebook page on Daniel Gray or Trailer Park Prophet and read that. MSNBC has a message for frightened Democrats. Don't worry, Obama is still popular in Kenya. Supposedly that was actually on MSNBC. Oh, yes, sir. President Obama, September 2013, says you'll be able to purchase high-quality health insurance for less than the cost of your cell phone bill. We talked about this on Wednesday. On March 2014, President Obama suggests you cut household expenses such as cell phone bills in order to pay for health care. I mean, it doesn't get any more funnier than that. I mean, it's not funny. I understand that. Oh, here it is here. I think this is on Kane TV. Here's President Obama yesterday, I believe, explaining how people can just forego their cell phone bill or cable bill to pay for their ObamaCare. I mean, what's more important? And don't forget, Obama promised that all of our health care would go down by $2,500 a year if Obamacare if Obamacare was actually implemented. You don't hear much about that. So maybe we played this on Wednesday. Here's President Obama. He's in front of Univision and Telemundo. All right, Mr. President, welcome back to the Trailer Park Profit Show. Don't be afraid. He's kind of scared to be on this show. I mean, it's intimidating. Mr. President, are you there, sir? I know you're there, sir. We want to... There we go. Presidential Healthcare Town Hall with Spanish language media on the 6th.
I make about $36,000 per year, and the minimum amount here is $215 per month. I think that's too much for me. That's a question for this gentleman here.
Come on, Mr. President.
As I was saying, a lot has been said about the cost, and for families that live from paycheck to paycheck, $316 might go up.
I guess what I would say is, if you looked at that person's budget and you looked at their cable bill, their telephone, their cell phone bill, other things that they're spending on, it may turn out that it's just they haven't prioritized healthcare because right now everybody's healthy. Nobody actually wants to spend money on health insurance until they get sick. And then once they're sick, the costs of not having health insurance are a lot worse than the costs of having health insurance. I guarantee you, if that gentleman who just wrote you that letter, and I don't know his particular circumstance and whether he actually has gotten all the information about the subsidies that might be available, but I guarantee you that even at $300 a month, if heaven forbid something happened to him or a family member where they got sick and really needed, let's say, a week's worth of hospitalization, he will wish that he had paid that $300 a month.
Did you catch that? What's kind of funny is the president is suggesting that a family of 4 will only be paying $300.
That even at $300 a month, if heaven forbid something happened to him or a family member where they got sick and really needed, let's say, a week's worth of hospitalization, he will wish that he had paid that $300 a month.
See, the problem there, as far as I can see, is by every account, a family of 4 is going to be paying well over $500, $600, $700 a month. I mean, we've heard reports of $900 a month, $1,200 a month for a family of 4. So the president is misrepresenting the actual amount that people are going to have to pay for Obamacare. I mean, I guess I have seen some millennials paying $150 a month, but I've seen others saying that it's well over $300 a month. And that's just it. Nobody knows what the hell's going on with Obamacare. They can't tell us how many people are enrolled. Like I said, we don't know how many people have actually had their policies vested. They don't know how many people have paid their policy. It's a disaster. And the president is tap dancing like Fred Astaire. Now, I like this idea. Up in Alaska on the 12th, the Alaskan House of Representatives passed legislation that will keep money in the pockets of Alaskans by providing options such as permanently registering your vehicle or trailer. I like that. Russian forces are amassing on the Ukraine border. This story comes from the New York Times. Russia acknowledged significant operations in several regions abutting the Ukraine on Thursday, even as Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany assailed the Kremlin's actions in some of her toughest rebukes so far. Now, that means we're getting ready for a war. Or Putin's trying to intimidate Obama into an unwise decision. Oh, this is kind of cool. Here's a pretty cool video. This is again on MSNBC. This lady, I think I've seen her before. Her name is Chelsea Handler, tells Piers Morgan, that prick on CNN who got fired. He's a British guy. Anyways, reportedly, this Chelsea Handler told Piers Morgan to shove it on live TV. All right, let's see if we have the video here. I got the transcript. Okay, here it is. Here's the video. And again, this is on CNN. Chelsea is going to tell the Brit to shove it. Take it away.
How do you spend your life when you're not working? What will your life here be this week? What will you do?
Well, I am working this week.
After the show, where do you go? What do you do?
Well, I have to come here and tolerate this nonsense, and then I have to
This nonsense is designed to flog you or torture you.
I know. I'm going to go do a book signing at Target in Westwood, and then I go on the road every weekend and perform live stand-up comedy and do book signings, and, you know, that's it. I'm a workhorse. I'm a workaholic.
You tweet very amusingly.
I wish you did. I mean, in the middle of the commercial break, I want your viewers to know, they must know because they're probably following you on Twitter. I mean, you can't even pay attention for 60 seconds. You're a terrible interviewer.
Well, you just weren't keeping my attention.
Well, that's not my problem.
It is your problem.
This is your show. You have to pay attention to the guests that you invited on your show.
They're interesting enough.
Yeah, they are. Listen, it doesn't matter how interesting I am. You signed up for this job. Does. Well, maybe that's why your job is coming to an end.
Yeah!
Wow.
Oh my God, where's the shove it? I didn't hear the shove it. Oh man, but that's awesome, man. He just stuck it to her. And I don't know, she may have overreacted, but oh my God, what a great reaction. I want to hear that again. Let's listen to this again.
How do you spend your life when you're not working? What will your life here be this week? What will you do?
Well, I am working this week.
After the show, where do you go? What do you do?
Well, I have to come here and tolerate this nonsense, and then I have to
This nonsense is designed to flog you or torture you.
I know. I'm going to go do a book signing at Target in Westwood, and then I go on the road every weekend and perform live stand-up comedy and do book signings, and, you know, that's it. I'm a workhorse. I'm a workaholic.
You tweet very amusingly.
I wish you did. I mean, in the middle of the commercial break, I want your viewers to know, they must know because they're probably following you on Twitter. I mean, you can't even pay attention for 60 seconds. You're a terrible interviewer.
Well, you just weren't keeping my attention.
Well, that's not my problem.
It is your problem.
This is your show. You have to pay attention to the guests that you invited on your show.
They're interesting enough.
Yeah, they are. Listen, it doesn't matter how interesting I am. You signed up for this job. Well, maybe that's why your job is coming to an end.
Wow.
Wow.
So I guess the learning moment here, the takeaway, is that Piers was being rude by spending his time during the commercial break on his Twitter account when he has a live human being in front of him. And I would think generally manners would suggest that you should be attentive to the person who is actually in your space, in your face, in 3D. That should trump all your little Twitter sycophant friends. And that's the point. But it shows that a lot of people are lacking basic manners. No surprise. And of course, Piers Morgan, it should be reminded, is a progressive socialist status. British prick who lost his job. I'm glad. Oh my God, this is kind of an interesting story. I don't know if I have the numbers. This is from Denver, Colorado. As you probably know, Colorado and Washington, Oregon, Washington are the first two states in the country to legalize marijuana. And Colorado has been receiving a lot of tax revenue, or at least tax revenue reporting is suggesting that Colorado is going to have a huge windfall in tax revenue from marijuana. And I think it's even going to be huger this summer, because a lot of people, you got to think, are planning their vacations on going to Colorado and buying some pot, or at least being able to hang out in a place where they can smoke pot reasonably, without the expectation of being hassled. They can actually go someplace and smoke pot legally. I mean, it's going to be, the pot tourism in Colorado is going to be huge. But this story is, hey, I guess we got a video here. It's from Denver. It's about the tax revenues from Colorado's new recreational marijuana industry are pouring into state coffers, and that's actually a bit of a problem for lawmakers. Taxpayers, however, may stand to benefit if tax makers or if lawmakers decide to refund the tax revenue that comes in above last year's $67 million first-year estimate. So what they're saying is that the likelihood is that in tax year 2013 that the tax revenues from marijuana are going to be well over the $67 million projection or estimate for the first year of marijuana. Actually, they're talking about this year, 2014. And so in the first 3 months, their estimate, obviously, of $67 million windfall in tax revenues from the sale of marijuana is really low. And in Colorado, we have what's called a Tabor Amendment, which is in the Constitution, and it says that if there's an increase in taxes, that money would be refunded back to the people, or that there has to be an actual election. So the people of Colorado will be asked whether or not they want to keep the tax rate for marijuana in fiscal year 2014 at $67 million. Now, anything above that $67 million, that goes back to the people, which I really love that idea. I want some of that money. And we're supposed to have an election because of the Tabor Amendment. And this is going to be a big showdown in Colorado, and a big showdown across the West. And we're fighting over money, which is the most favorite thing people like to fight over. And I'm going to love this fight. And I hope we get the money. I mean, I want a check. You know what I'm saying there? My fellow lover of liberty. So let's listen to this video. I'm trying to think, let's see, where's this from? Oh, Fox 31. I don't know what town in Colorado, but I want to listen to this. All right, here we go. This, again, is Colorado, and they're talking about refunding marijuana tax money to the taxpayers of Colorado.
Tell you about this afternoon, Coloradans are buying so much recreational marijuana, the state may have to refund the excess tax dollars to taxpayers, all of us, even those who haven't spent a dime on pot. Political reporter Eli Stoke is live tonight with this exclusive story. Eli?
Deb, it is a jaw-dropper indeed, but in this document that we've obtained, a legal analysis by the state that was sent to lawmakers this week, it is crystal clear. The state basically concluding that all the marijuana tax revenues that comes in higher than what was estimated by the state last year, all of that money may have to go back to Colorado taxpayers. Last November, Colorado voters overwhelmingly approved Prop AA, a 15% excise tax and 10% sales tax on legal marijuana.
It was the intent of the people of the state to tax marijuana at a very high level.
In the Blue Book, voters were told that would bring in an estimated $67 million in 2014.
Would have ever to expect.
But after a few months of sales, it looks like the actual tax revenues from legal pot will far exceed that Blue Book estimate, possibly by around $40 million.
Tabor is going to have an impact on these dollars.
This week, State Rep Crisanta Duran and her 5 colleagues on the Joint Budget Committee got this legal analysis from the state, which concludes that the Taxpayer Bill of Rights will only let the state keep those $67 million in taxes. no matter how much more comes in.
Yay!
Have to go back to the voters of Colorado to ask them to keep that revenue, or we're going to have to refund those dollars.
Lawmakers can lower the tax rates too, but that would impact the $40 million in excise taxes being set aside for school construction.
So that's probably off the table.
JPC member Sherry Giroux says she sees a one-time Tabor refund as a more likely way out of this mess, rather than asking voters either this November or next if the state can keep all the cash.
Basically, it could cost the state money because we have legalized the sale of recreational marijuana. That's the problem.
It won't be till the end of the year when the state actually knows for sure how much money it has from marijuana, but this refund, it could be about $40 million in excess, could be up to $100 million in excess that gets refunded. If it's 40, that amounts to about $8 per taxpayer. Lawmakers do have a lot of things to decide, though, as they go forward with this, including if they do refunds, whether those go to every single Colorado taxpayer or just those who have actually purchased legal marijuana. Reporting live, Eli Stokos, Fox 31, Denver. Eli,
Why would it only go to the people that buy marijuana? That doesn't make any sense, because a lot of people that are going to be buying the marijuana are from out of state. And I'm disappointed it's only $8 on 40 million. So then, and then, I don't know, I don't want to go into budgeting. Well, but you heard there about the money that's earmarked for building schools. So they're going to be nicknamed the pot schools. See, I don't like earmarking money. Earmarking money is bad, bad, bad. Every year it should be zero-based budgeting. You have to defend your existence. Let's see. Oh, here's a list. I don't want to get into Obamacare. Let's see. We got 45 minutes. Let me go back to my studio. See if we have any callers. Looks like nada on the callers. If you want to be a caller, you can do so. You can dial 646-716-8506. Again, that's 646-716-8506. I want to do this from Judge Napolitano. He explains the false left-right paradigm. And let's give it a listen. And I'm doing this because I've noticed over the last 30 years, 40 years being in politics that people are... let's just listen to the judge. Left-right paradigm. Does it exist?
What if that establishment doesn't want and doesn't have the consent of the governed? What if the two-party system was actually a mechanism used to limit so-called public opinion? What if there were more than two sides to every issue, but the two parties wanted to box you into a corner, one of their corners? What if there's no such thing as public opinion, because every thinking person has opinions that are uniquely his own? What if what we call public opinion was just a manufactured narrative that makes it easier to convince people that if their views are different, then there's something wrong with that, or there's something wrong with them? What if the whole purpose of the Democratic and Republican parties was not to expand voters' choices, but to limit them? What if the widely perceived differences between the two parties was just an illusion? What if the heart of the government policy remains the same no matter who's in the White House? What if the heart of government policy remains the same no matter what the people want? What if those vaunted differences between Democrat and Republican were actually just minor disagreements? What if both parties just want power and are willing to have young people fight meaningless wars in order to enhance that power? What if both parties continue to fight the war on drugs just to give bureaucrats and cops bigger budgets?
Exactly.
And more jobs? What if government policies didn't change when government leaders did? What if no matter who won an election, government stayed the same? What if government was really a revolving door for political hacks bent on exploiting the people once they're in charge? What if both parties supported welfare, war, debt, bailouts, and big government? What if the rhetoric that candidates displayed on the campaign trail was dumped after electoral victory? What if Barack Obama campaigned as an anti-war, pro-civil liberties candidate and then waged senseless wars while assaulting your rights that the Constitution is supposed to protect? What if George W. Bush campaigned on a platform of non-intervention and small government and then waged a foreign policy of muscular military intervention and a domestic policy of vast government borrowing and growth? What if Bill Clinton declared that the era of big government was over, but actually just convinced Republicans like Newt Gingrich that they can get what they want out of big government too? What if the Republicans went along with it? What if Ronald Reagan spent 6 years running for president, promising to shrink the government, but then the government grew while he was in the White House? What if, notwithstanding...
Well, did it grow incrementally under Reagan?
Reagan's ideas and cheerfulness and libertarian rhetoric, there really was no Reagan revolution at all.
Oh.
What if all this is happening again? What if Rick Santorum is being embraced by voters who want small government, even though Senator Santorum voted for the Patriot Act, for an expansion of Medicare, and for raising the debt ceiling by trillions of dollars? What if Mitt Romney is being embraced by voters who want anyone but Barack Obama, but they don't realize that Mitt Romney might as well be Barack Obama on everything from warfare to welfare? What if Ron Paul is being ignored by the media, not because, as it claims, he's unappealing or unelectable, but because he doesn't fit into the pre-manufactured public opinion mold used by the establishment to pigeonhole the electorate and create the so-called narrative that drives media coverage of elections? What if the biggest difference between most candidates was not substance, but style? What if those stylistic differences were packaged as substantive ones to reinforce the illusion of a difference between Democrats and Republicans? What if Mitt Romney wins and ends up continuing most of the same policies that Barack Obama promoted? What if Barack Obama's policies, too, are merely extensions of those from George W. Bush? What if a government that manipulated us could be fired? What if a government that lacked the true and knowing consent of the governed could be dismissed? What if it were possible to have a real game changer? What if we need a Ron Paul to preserve and protect our freedoms from the government? What if we could make elections matter again? What if we could do something about this? From New York, defending freedom every night of the week.
Judge Napolitano. Food for thought. I did want to add one thing, and that is that he used if a lot. And I like to say if is the biggest word in the human vocabulary. And I wanted to point out something too, though. You remember during the Johnson era, that was the advent of the Great Society, which increased the welfare services we made available. Johnson, I believe, got support for the Vietnam War with his Democratic Party by also pursuing a social agenda, which was the Great Society, more welfare. So Johnson pushed for welfare, and the Democrats gave him in exchange the Vietnam War. All right. And Bush, I think, did kind of the same thing. Bush Jr. He went for the, what was it, the brand new drug program for seniors. And the federal government did get bigger under Bush. Or maybe, I don't know, you could argue Bush at least reduced the angle of the increase of the federal government. Who knows? I'm not really sure. But Bush, I honestly think he gave on some social issues, some domestic social issues, in order for him to fight the Iraqi war. Maybe not. I just ask that question. Okay, let's see. I want to listen to some music. We're going to go into my experience in loco government. But I do want to listen to some background music, because I already know this story, and it's kind of boring for me to talk about again. But I wanted to get it on tape So I have it for prosperity, I think is the correct word, for the future, so it can be archived. And let's see, what do we got here? Life, beautiful, natural background. Only 31 seconds. Tag along love song classics of the 80 all-female artist with nature background video. You know, that sounds kind of good. But if someone's singing in the background, I'm not going to be able to talk. How about this? Healing energy meditation music. Relax mind with calm background music of nature sounds. That sounds perfect. This is from Yellow Brick Cinema. Oh, I gotta take a breath here. Alright, we got about a half hour. I probably ought to tell you I'm Daniel Gray. I'm the Trailer Park Prophet, broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado, on Blog Talk Radio. This is Loco Friday, where we talk about local government. And I want you to remember and get this tattooed on your children that all politics is local. Oh my God. Alright, let's see. What screen do I want to be on? You know what? I think I'm going to go to Drudge just in case we have any breaking news before I get into my life experience. I know some of you are out there listening live. Alright, nope, nothing new. Talks in London breakdown, I don't know what that is. Another story about Russia massing military forces near the border with Ukraine. That's a developing story. Kremlin bans websites critical of the government. Again, this is off the Drudge Report. Says here, hit by powerful cyber attack. Someone's attacking somebody through the internet. Russia moving treasury holds offshore. Did you get that? So Russia's moving their money back onto their shore. And remember, that's because Obama threatened some economic sanctions against Russia if they don't pull out of the Ukraine, out of Crimea. Let's see here. Another story from Estonia, which is in the region there, the Baltic region. Story says, or headline, Russia preparing to invade eastern Ukraine. Next story, crazed Putin deporting executives for speeding, even jaywalking. Anyone that's pro-Democrat or pro-America is getting booted out of Russia. Or at least some of them are. Oh, and here's another story. We reported on this a week ago. Russia says that they intercepted U.S. drones over Crimea. So this will be the third drone involved in that conflict in the Ukraine. Oh, interesting story on Roush. The guy that owns Facebook, Zuckerman. Evidently, the NSA have been surveilling some of his accounts, and he actually called the president on the phone to ask him, "What's up?" And I think the president told Zuckerman that basically, grow up. That's the world you live in now. So maybe Zuckerman will grow an organic computer worthy of his liberty and understand that Obama is a fascist, for God's sakes. Lady Gaga roast pig, rides bull, and gets punked on some stupid little show. Again, this coming from Drudge Report. God, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of stories. But I should probably get on with my own personal story. I was thinking about how I wanted to start. And the first actual election that the Trailer Park Prophet was involved in was in Aurora, Colorado. I ran for a student body seat. I actually was in 6th grade, and I actually went to 6th grade twice. And I ran for representative and lost. And that was my first election. And I guess my next involvement in local government would have been in Littleton, Colorado. I was there during off and on during the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And Littleton is a beautiful little community, or it was a beautiful little community. It was the last community that cattle drives would stop at before they moved on to their destination in Denver. And there's some beautiful books about Littleton written by a guy named Ralph Moody. And he wrote these wonderful books about Littleton, Colorado. One was called Man of the Family. And this was back in the 20s and 30s. And the man of the family in this book written by Ralph Moody was this mother, this single widowed mother in Littleton who was raising her 2 or 3 kids, and she was doing the repairs on the doilies and the curtains from the Brown Palace. And so she would travel with her children by cable car from Littleton to downtown Denver. And her son would gather up all his kids when there was a cattle drive coming through Denver, or coming through Littleton to Denver. He would gather up all his buddies, and they would block off the streets, so when the cattle came through town, they didn't wander off down the alleys and into people's gardens. And this kid earned money by gathering up his kids. These were his little gang of kids. And the cattle herders would pay him. But at any rate, Littleton, I guess, is little town America everywhere, but I want to tell myself somehow that Littleton is a little special. And Ralph Moody, this author I spoke of, he also created Little Britches. Little Britches was started in Littleton, Colorado. Now it's in Colorado Springs, but it taught kids how to ride horses and do speed events, and they did have rodeos, and that was started in Littleton. And the Fairgrounds in Littleton, the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds, was a huge block of land right in the middle of Littleton. Huge. It's called the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds. And I mean, they had a grandstand, a beautiful big grandstand where you could watch people do goat roping and riding broncs and cows, and little kids riding sheep. And I used to do gymkhanas and old moxies, which are speed events on horses. In fact, I was the state champion rescue racer in all of Colorado. At any rate, it was a wonderful place, and there was a lot of outbuildings for various events, you know, get-togethers, Halloween nights, dances, all kinds of things. And it had a lot of room for expansion. Oh, we also had an outdoor ice rink. A river ran through this Arapahoe County Fairgrounds, which, by the way, I got to tell you, the Arapahoe County Fairgrounds was owned by the children of Arapahoe County. Somebody, I wish I could remember who, gave this huge tract of land to the children of Arapahoe County so that there would be a fairgrounds forevermore. And plus, you know, there could be amusement parks or whatever the people wanted, golf courses, on and on and on. But somebody gave that land to the children of Arapahoe County. And there was a time in my life when I started working down at the Colorado legislature. And that happened in 1979. I started down at the Colorado State Senate. I was hired as a sergeant of arms, assistant sergeant at arms, and my job was to maintain the dignity of the chambers, make sure that whoever was in the chamber was supposed to be there. We delivered the mail around messages. You know, it was a cool job. And after 1 year, I became the Senate reading clerk, which is a really cool job. And then I would run the committees upstairs as a sergeant of arms. So I did that for 10 years. But during that time, my focus was on what was going on down at the State House. And playing hockey and basketball and chasing women and having enough fun for 10 or 12 priests. But in my absence, in my mental absence, in Littleton, my hometown, my beloved hometown, it went to hell, basically. And what happened during that time when I wasn't paying close attention, the children of Arapahoe County lost their fairgrounds. Commissioner Bob Brooks, at the time, was an actual employee of a developer who was developing the horse track. In Littleton, we had a horse track, Centennial Horse Track, and it was one of the jewels of Littleton. At any rate, it fell into disrepair and wound up getting subdivided, and the developer that was building condos needed money to be able to build the condos in order to sell. And so he convinced the county commissioners, one of which was his employee, Bob Brooks, to allow the county to use the children's fairgrounds as collateral to do the developer's building in his project, on his project at the racetrack. So at any rate, the Arapahoe Fairgrounds, the property of the children, was used as collateral for this developer. And remember, the developer had as their employee Bob Brooks, who was on the Arapahoe County Board of Commissioners. All this is totally corrupt, obviously, but at any rate, the developer went broke, and the children ended up losing their fairgrounds to the bank. And that's a really sad, sad story. And it was totally corrupt, and no one in the Republican Party did what they ought to do and throw Bob Brooks out of office. Actually, there might have been a recall, but the damage was already done. Nobody went back and said, wait a minute, you didn't have the right to use the children's fairground in Arapahoe County as collateral for a private debt. But no one stood on their hind legs and said, you know what, that's wrong. And here's this Bob Brooks. He was actually living in a house owned by the developer. Bob Brooks, county commissioner for Arapahoe County, living in a house of a developer that got a sweetheart deal from Arapahoe County. I mean, it was insane. Absolutely insane. And there were a few articles in the newspaper, and that was it. But I came out against it. I was the only one that put together a leaflet and handed it out, and I pointed out how crooked that was, and that the county, and in particular the Republican Party in Arapahoe County, ought to do something about it. And I wound up being refused to go to my Arapahoe County convention. because I came out against the Republican establishment, Republican Bob Brooks. I may have forgot to mention that Bob Brooks, the Commissioner Bob Brooks that worked for the developer, was a Republican. And I'm telling you, I was handing out leaflets at caucuses, and I was letting people know, look, we gotta denounce this guy. We gotta make sure that the children get their fairgrounds back. And I was roundly rebuffed, or rebuked, I think is a little more accurate, shunned. And again, I was not allowed to go to a county convention, Arapahoe County Republican Convention, because I took on Bob Brooks, one of my own Republicans. And get a load of this. Bob Brooks wound up working under Republican Governor Bill Owens. He wound up working in Bill Owens's administration. Bill Owens was elected the governor of Colorado twice. He was a carpetbagger from Texas, a weirdo. And he hired Bob Brooks, the guy we just talked about, to be the head of Colorado's local government. Can you believe that? I mean, for me, that just totally blows my mind. But I think it gives you some insight into the darkness of Bill Owens's heart, Bob Brooks's heart. I mean, these people are devoid of virtue. And what's even more ironic, my old best friend Bob Lee from Littleton, Colorado, I was Bob Lee's best man in his wedding to Nancy Turner. Bob Lee was Bill Owens's, what did they call him, the chief of staff. Bob Lee, my old best friend, that I was his best man in his wedding, was Bill Owens's chief of staff. So he worked with Bob Brooks all the time during the Owens administration. And also, I got to tell you, Bill Owens had a reputation of being a ladies' man, which he was. And he eventually got this one girl pregnant, such was the rumor. But during the Bill Owens administration, his wife went home to Aurora and lived in their house the whole time he was in office. I mean, the guy was a total scumbag. And Bob Brooks is a scumbag, and my friend Bob Lee is a scumbag. And I want to tell you another story, since we're talking about local government. When I was in high school, I went to Arapahoe High School my first year. Arapahoe had just taken state in football. And the next summer, I was going to go to this brand new school that was in my neighborhood called Heritage High School. So I was only going to go 1 year at Arapahoe and then 2 years at Heritage and then graduate. Well, that first year I was there with Bob Lee. I met him my 9th grade year at Euclid Junior High. And then I had another really good friend. His name was Jim Roush. And Jim and Bob were competing for my friendship in a way, and sometimes. At any rate, we would hang out, the three of us sometimes. Me, Jim Roush, and Bob Lee. Well, this one night, we were over at this house that Bob Lee was house sitting. And we were drinking booze and eating pizza. And then we went to the drive-in in my mom's Oldsmobile 98, the three of us. And we were drinking Boone's Farm and watching some dumb movie. And we went back to this house that Bob was house sitting, and Bob and I got into a fight, and Jim Roush separated us, and it was a nasty fight. And the next day, Jim and I went back to the drive-in because someone knocked a piece of chrome off my mom's car, and I got an opportunity to talk to Jim about what happened between Bob and I. And Jim basically said, I hope you guys never fight again, and I don't want you guys to ever fight again, and on and on and on. And basically Jim was kind of telling me that his time on earth was up. He gave me the most macabre sort of presentation of his present state. But at any rate, the next day, I wanted Bob and Jim to come over to my house, and Bob went over to Jim's house to pick up Jim and run him over to my house, and his mom said he couldn't go. And Jim hopped on the back of Bob's Volkswagen that he was driving. It was his mom's Volkswagen. He hopped on the back of Bob's Volkswagen, this red Volkswagen. Jim's on the back of Bob's Volkswagen, and Bob is driving through the streets of Littleton. He drove like 6 or 7 blocks, jagging turns, you know, all kinds of left, right turns. There was a lot of ditches, you know, for runoff water. And here's Jim on the back of this VW, and Bob is speeding and intentionally trying to throw Jim Roush from his mother's car. Speeding. There were accounts that Bob was speeding, and Bob eventually got Jim to fall off the back of this Volkswagen. And Jim hit his head on the pavement right in front of my sister's boyfriend's house, TJ Vandersteeg, and Jim died right there on the spot from falling off of Bob Lee's car. And because Bob Lee's father was Frank Lee and connected in the Republican Party, and because Frank Lee was also on the Board of Education for the Littleton Public Schools and wrote an article for the Littleton Independent called Soap and Education, not as good. Oh, I forget, there was a cute little saying after that. But at any rate, because Bob's father was connected, Bob never got prosecuted for killing Jim Roush. And there should have been an outrage in the community. But because Bob Lee was connected, Jim Roush was murdered. I mean, Jim Roush got murdered by Bob Lee in the summer of '72. Bob Lee of Littleton, Colorado, who worked for Governor Bill Owens, is a murderer. And yet he made it all the way to chief of staff of a governor. And Bob should have never gotten out of Littleton. I mean, there should have been an outcry from the community to say this is wrong, and Bob Lee should stand in front of a grand jury and answer for his actions. That's why all politics is local. And now look where Bob wound up. He wound up being in one of the most powerful positions in the state of Colorado. It's absolutely mind-boggling, but it really gives credence to the purpose of the show on Friday, Local Friday, is that all politics is local. Bob Lee should have had his political career cut off a long time ago. Bob Brooks should have had his political career cut off a long time ago, but it wasn't. And the media turns a blind eye. And if you're connected and if you buy advertising, your story stays out of the press. Or if your message goes along with the progressive socialist movement, you're good. All right. So that was Littleton. And you know, I can go on a lot more about Littleton though, because I got to tell you some of this story. So I was creating quite a stir. My mom had just died, thank God. I knew I was done working at the Colorado legislature. This would have been 1995. I knew I wanted to spend the second part of my life in what I called real Colorado and wanted to get back to a small town like Littleton used to be. And so I was willing to get out of my comfort zone. I started this newspaper called the Rocky Mountain Organic News, And I started taking on some really big institutions. And I wrote about the story I just told you about losing the Fairgrounds. I started writing about how the city of Littleton was taking raw sewage and dumping it on farm fields. I actually followed these big trucks with this raw sewage. I was writing about that. I was writing about how organizations like the Colorado Municipal League and Colorado counties were organizations of governments, and I said, you know, that's just totally intellectually dishonest. Government collections of government getting money from other governments to have a government viewpoint, you know, I mean, it's kind of scary when you really think about it. So I'm writing this paper, and then I discovered the internet, and then I was also involved in trying to slow people down. I was fascinated by what I called the car culture, and how people, when they got behind the wheel of an automobile, that somehow it halved their intelligence and doubled their ego. And I was trying to slow people down, because we had some incidents. We had some accidents, some people had been hit by cars, and you could see that the escalation in the energy from some people behind the wheel, and of course the total blind neglect that some people have. They're just oblivious. And I put up this little sign on a stop sign in the adjacent neighborhood to my house, and it said, "Don't treat our streets like your killing fields." And this old guy saw me putting up this sign for like the second time. I wrote it with magic marker on cardboard, and he saw me putting up this sign, and he waved to me. He drove right up to me. He was within like 10 feet of me with his car, and then he was motioning me to step in front of his car to come around to the driver's side and talk to him. And he was really emphatic. He really wanted me to walk in front of his car. And I could see he was angry, and I really felt like he was going to run me down. I thought he was a danger to me. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So he cranks his wheel to the right in my direction and guns the engine, and literally ran into this big, huge bush next to the stop sign. He was literally going to try and hit me with the car, and you could see the tracks and everything on the sidewalk. So I called the city of Littleton. I called the police, and I told them what happened, and they ended up prosecuting me. And part of this was all connection to the connection to my newspaper and bringing up all this corruption and whatnot. And then there was another incident where I was actually out there defacing campaign signs during this county election. I was actually adding something to the signs, and so I was defacing them. And this guy, he was the past mayor of Littleton. His name is Charlie Emily. He saw me defacing this one campaign sign for the guy he was backing, and he started chasing me through the streets. You know, I got back into my friend's van, and I was driving around through Littleton trying to shake this old Charlie Emily, who was like 82 at that time. And then finally I stopped, and we had a discussion, and then he called the police, and he told them that I physically assaulted him, which was a lie. So then I had the police at my door, and the straw that broke my camel's back in Littleton, this one night my roommate, her truck broke down on the street on Windermere outside our house, my house. And she asked me to change the tire. I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it in the morning when it's light. So I set up these little lights she had, you know, that signify that the car was broken down. And in the morning, some kid came through, because I saw him do it, a high school kid from Heritage High School where I went to school. He ran over these little lights I set up. And so I got up, I changed the tire for my roommate, cleaned up all of the reflector lights, that's what they were, and I decided to go over to the high school, which is in my neighborhood, Heritage High School, and talk to the principal and tell him that, you know, it'd be nice if he could ask the kids out of this neighborhood to slow down. And I'm in the principal's office, and we were talking, and he looked at my pictures in the annual for 1974, 1973, and he was laughing. He was a really fun guy. It was really fun being in his office, and I told him that, you know, it'd be kind of nice if the children were brought aware of driving slow. We've had some instances, you know, blah, 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 blah. And so anyway, it was great, and I went home. And in the meantime, when I was in the principal's office, somebody in Littleton actually was trying to get a school bus, a Littleton school bus, to slow down. And so I guess they were waving their arms and pushing down, like, slow down, slow down. And it was at the same time when I'm in the office with the principal of Heritage High School. But what happened was the chief of police had resigned the day before, or a few days before. And so the town manager was acting as the chief of police for Littleton. And when the report came in that someone was trying to slow down a school bus, the political operatives, the town manager, who's a political operative, knows about my newspaper, knows about my opinions. He decides that I had to be that individual that was telling this bus driver to slow down. So he sent all of the available Littleton cops to my house on Windermere in the Highline Canal. And they show up, and they hop out of their cars, and they draw their guns. And they're looking for me because they think I'm the one that was telling the bus to slow down. And I regret not walking away, because me and Bailey just walked in off the Highline Canal and came through I had 5 acres on the Highline Canal. So I saw them come in. They couldn't see me, but I saw them. There was probably 6 officers, guns drawn, and I thought they were looking for some kind of fugitive. So I came out of the bushes. I could have went back into the forest and gotten away from these guys. But they weren't looking for a fugitive. They were looking for me, and they arrested me, took me downtown. And it was all because of my politics. All because of my politics. And no one in Littleton would stand up for me, because to do so would be to, intentionally give yourself the plague. But that's exactly the situation I think is going on in a lot of communities out there across the fruited plain, as Rush Limbaugh says, that the people that are going out there and speaking out against these local governments are being chastised by the forces that be. And in most cases, the progressive socialist status, they love to run local newspapers, they love to run the school board, they love to run the county governments, the city governments. I mean, they love being in people's business, and they love power. All right, enough. I actually have more to talk about. I realize now that this is something I really want to do. So I'm gonna leave it there. All right. And then on next Friday, I'll pick it up from that story where the police arrested me. And I have a lot more stories. I have stories from Littleton. I have another story from Littleton. I have a bunch of stories from Crestone, Colorado. A bunch of stories from Crested Butte and Gunnison. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it right there. This is Daniel Gray, broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Crestone, Colorado. And we'll see you on Monday. Sunday on Monday. You guys take it easy. Keep it classy. Remember, freedom is not free of responsibility. You got to understand the issues. You got to know the political actors, and you've got to be involved. You must stand up and be counted. Yay!